And we're going to approach this by starting with a look at the different layers of labor market information. So it starts with industries. I have that at the bottom as kind of a foundational category because that is tends to be sort of the broadest way of looking at the economy, breaking it up into different industries using NAICS codes from the North American Industry Classification System. And then you can get a little more narrow by looking at the occupations within those industries. Those are tied to what are called SOC codes or SOC codes, Standard Occupation Classification. And then the next layer up is employers, who are the specific companies that are hiring for those occupations. Getting more specific, you can look at the specific job titles that those employers are hiring for. And then on the very top, we have skills. And so these two down here, you can think of as traditional labor market information. These often come from government sources, which is both strength and weakness. In terms of strength, they tend to be well organized. When the classification systems are updated, the entity updating it will provide a crosswalk so that you can kind of track, okay, what is this occupation called now? So it's good for historical analysis, looking at trends and things like that. But some of this data is only updated annually. Sometimes it's released quarterly. If you're really lucky, it might come out monthly. And so that's why it's also important to be looking at things like employers and job titles, which are not only more detailed and precise, but also real time. Employers are posting job postings on the internet now more than ever. And they're doing that in real time. They have an opening, they post that opening. When it's filled, they close that posting. And so job postings provide us with this detailed information about employers and the roles they're trying to fill, and also provide us with really, really valuable skills data, which is the most granular way of understanding the labor market. And we'll talk about some unique advantages that provides later. Shout out to student surveys and completions data, also important, also useful to understand the market that you're trying to align to, but not the focus of this presentation, which is why I have them kind of off to the side there. In general, when doing labor market alignment, you want to take a regional approach over a national approach. The United States is a big place, and economies vary from region to region. That can be state to state, even county to county in some of the larger states. And so for your institution, it's fun and interesting to see kind of the headlines you might see in Newsweek or something, top 10 jobs or top 10 hot careers or whatever it may be. And it's good to pay attention to that. Certainly prospective students probably will be, but be aware that those things can be skewed by, say, a New York City and a Los Angeles. These major population centers can kind of overshadow some other regions with less population when you're just looking at a national level. The one exception, of course, is if the nation is your region, like if you're entirely online or your brand is just such that you pull students from all over the country, then sure, pay attention to the nation. But for the vast majority of institutions, regional focus is important. So let's dive into industries. This is just an example, an industry table that I pulled from our analyst platform for Richmond, Virginia, because that is my hometown. And so it's fun to look at. And these are some of the kind of the key basic metrics that you'd want to look at when you're analyzing industries. So I'm looking at job change from 2015 to 2021, just answering the question, what are the industries in my region that are growing? Where are new jobs coming into being in the region? What kind of business activities are they associated with? You can also look at percent change. I tend to want to view both side by side because, for example, down here, crop production, 140% growth, that can be really eye-catching. But it's important to then look over and see in absolute terms, it's partly the high percentages because it's coming from a low base number of 850 jobs versus 30,000 for ambulatory healthcare services. So good to have context of both absolute change and percentage change there. Average earnings per job, again, money, not the only thing, but it is very much a thing. And so important to be aware, are these industries creating the kinds of jobs that pay a living wage, that pay a high wage, being aware of those statistics, and then location quotient. That's a really interesting one because it gives you a sense of, helps you answer the question, what are the unique strengths of my region? So location quotient is, if you're not familiar with it, basically it's a measure of how concentrated is this industry in my region versus the national average. So if it's over 1, if the location quotient number is over 1, then it's more concentrated in your region versus the average. If it's less than 1, then it's less concentrated than the average. We have an article on that in our knowledge base if you're curious to learn more. So these are some of the industries that pop out: ambulatory healthcare, professional scientific and technical services, and credit intermediation. This one jumped out to me because you can see it's showing strong growth and really high earnings. We're here in the 6 figures, and we've got a 1.85 location quotient, which tells me that this is kind of a unique strength. There's a lot of concentration of this type of business in my region. So those are some that I might zoom in on. This is the same kind of table, but for Richmond, Indiana. So we're in a different Richmond. And the whole point of this slide is just to illustrate the importance of taking a regional approach. So you can see here, hospitals, ambulatory healthcare services, that's kind of similar to what we were seeing in the other Richmond. But then food manufacturing, chemical manufacturing, that was not in the previous industry table. And so that's just showing there's going to be unique characteristics in your region, and that's why you need to zoom in on that. Now we dig. So we're digging down in detail, but we're working up through the pyramid. So the next most detailed category of labor market information is occupations. And this is to show you can just do the same kind, you can approach it the same way you were industries. This is an occupation table. You see similar metrics in terms of job change, always something to look at to identify growing occupations and industries. Median annual earnings, median is good because it can be sometimes more robust to not as skewed by the extremes on the high end or the low end versus an average figure. So paying attention to what are the high wage occupations, and then average annual openings. So in this time frame over the last 5-6 years, approximately how many openings are we seeing? This is a good way to get a sense for just how much opportunity is there for our graduates. And openings is a combination of job change, job growth, plus also replacement jobs, which would be people transitioning out of that occupation into another one, which creates a vacancy. So all that information is available in the table, not the only data points to look at, but just providing some examples there. The other way to approach this is to drill down on an industry of interest. So I've actually jumped back to the Richmond, Virginia industry table here. Professional scientific and technical services, we saw that that was a growing industry in our region. So what happens if I then just push on that? If I use this as a guide as I work my way up the pyramid and say I want to restrict myself to looking at occupations in that industry. This is what I see. These are the occupations within that industry, within that region. And you can see here percent of total jobs in the industry. So I can now see that accountants and auditors kind of comprise the biggest of these occupations are the biggest part of that industry. Okay, so maybe I want to drill down into opportunities for accountants and auditors. So I'll keep digging. Now I can see the top employers posting. And so now we're into that real-time labor market information. So in Richmond, Virginia, these are the specific companies. Got Capital One, Ernst & Young. State of Virginia, don't forget the public sector. Can be lots of opportunities there, and you can just go on down the list. And already you can start to see how this would provide really valuable insight for employer engagement. You can start asking questions like, do we have internship programs with any of these companies? Co-op experiences with these companies? Does anyone on our faculty have a relationship with leaders at these businesses and could bring them in for speaking or for recruitment? So that level of insight, both in terms of its detail and how recent it can be, because these are based on postings that change every day, can be really valuable. But you can actually get more detailed. Remember, the next level up is job titles. And so now I'm starting to see the specific roles. Unlike occupation codes, these are not standardized. So this is going to give you a better reflection of the actual language being used by employers themselves. And you can start to see things like, okay, internal auditors, that's interesting, directors of internal audit. Does our accounting program provide a concentration in audit? Should we? Do we at least have a course that really covers it? And then IT controllers, that's also interesting. Is there maybe an opportunity for some overlap between our business school and our IT or computer science to make sure that, that students are prepared for those kind of blended roles? So that's some of the insight you can get with job titles. Keep digging, and now we hit the skills. So on the left, you have your top hard skills. On the right, top common skills. And remember, this is all specific to accounting enrichment during this time frame. And of course, accounting is going to be a top skill. But then further down the list, you can start to see things like internal controls, okay, internal auditing, there's that again. Risk management, data analysis, that's an interesting one. Do we have an opportunity for our accounting students to maybe do an elective in data analytics? Is there some overlap there that could really position them well with those skills? In terms of common skills, you've got things like communications is there. Written communication is further down the list. If you have accounting students who are wondering, you know, why do I have to take this writing class? I just want to do accounting. Isn't that just spreadsheets? Well, not according to the employers that you want to work for, because they also want you to be able to articulate your ideas in writing, whether it's memos or emails. That's clearly a priority for them. So with a list like this, you can start to ask, A, are we teaching these skills? B, if we are we talking about them? Are we listing them in the syllabus? Are we listing them in the course description so that students can see that we are teaching these skills? And are we showing students that the reason we're teaching these skills is because there's employer demand for them, so that prospective students see that you are being intentional about aligning your curriculum with their career goals. You can also see related certifications that are mentioned in postings. You can begin to ask questions like, do our courses prepare students for some of these industry certifications? Is there some way we could blend this into our curriculum so that when they graduate, they also leave with this industry certification? These are just all ways to really add value to your programs based on labor market information. So putting this data to work, quick recap: industries and occupations. That's that high-level view of regional strengths and opportunities, helps guide further investigation. Employers and job titles, more detailed and real-time, see the actual roles that learners will be looking to fill, and use it to guide employer engagement, like we talked about, because nothing beats real relationships, having boots on the ground. And skills, actionable insight to inform curriculum improvement, can enrich the courses that you already offer. That's part of what's cool about it, is you may not need to launch an entirely new program. You may just be able to take those skill insights and revamp the courses you already have and do a better job articulating how they connect to the labor market so that students understand the relevance of what they're learning, and can help you spot emerging trends. Quick illustration of this last point. This is AWS, Amazon Web Services. And what you see in the little green bars there is prevalence of AWS in job titles. What you see in the much more noticeable purple bars is the prevalence of AWS in job descriptions. So if you're an institution and you're tracking the labor market and you're only paying attention to job titles, you might maybe notice that, oh, there's a little bit of growth in this AWS thing. But if you're paying attention to the actual skills in those postings, then you are absolutely going to notice the major growth in demand for Amazon Web Services, and can then use that to inform your curriculum, make sure that you're teaching it, make sure that it's in the right programs, and that students are aware of the opportunities connected to learning that skill. So that's just an illustration of why that level of granularity and recency with skill data is so valuable.